A modern symphony orchestra operates on a principle of strict synchronization. Musicians coordinate their physical movements to execute a specific, predetermined set of instructions. In most global traditions, music is a living action, a real-time negotiation between performers. Western classical music, however, requires obedience to a document. The act of writing a melody down changes its nature. It stops being a fleeting, spontaneous act and transforms into an object, a fixed, permanent asset. This reliance on sheet music is often presented as a natural artistic evolution, but the historical record suggests a different motive. The written score served as a deliberate mechanism for institutional control. Institutions weaponize the written note twice to eradicate improvisation. First, 9th century political leaders used it for empire-wide conformity. A millennium later, academics employed it to legitimize music as science. The classical canon functions as a meticulously engineered product of political and institutional power. Before the 8th century, European music was largely monophonic and oral. Congregations sang from memory, relying on repetition and regional improvisation. Charlemagne governed a fragmented Frankish empire. To hold it together, he needed cultural homogenization and stronger political ties with Rome. He chose a top-down mandate, suppressing diverse local liturgies and imposing a single, standardized Roman Gregorian chant across his entire territory. Standardizing a liturgy requires the elimination of improvisation. To guarantee uniformity, the empire forced a transition away from oral memory toward visual pitch charting. This system marginalized local identities. Any improvisational flair or deviation from the standardized text was penalized, labeled by authorities as corrupt or savage. To ensure compliance, the empire claimed these specific written models were composed under divine inspiration by Pope Gregory the Great, making deviation a spiritual transgression. The first musical canon was a blunt political instrument designed to absorb regional identities into a unified state. Over the next few centuries, notation evolved. Basic memory aids transformed into strict visual grids, pioneered by theorists like Guido d'Arezzo to lock exact pitches in place. This grid enabled polyphony. By stacking notes vertically, a single composer could align multiple independent melodies to sound simultaneously. Sight-reading these multi-part textures replaced the improvising co-creator with a strict executor of the composer's architecture. The printing press turned this dynamic into an industry, allowing publishers to mass-produce these highly controlled musical scores. Mass reproduction allowed composers to bypass localized patronage. The written sheet music became the primary economic artifact. A technology invented to help monks remember chants had transformed music. Spontaneous performance was replaced by a complex, mass-produced physical product. By the 19th century, European culture was dominated by the ideals of scientific positivism and empirical proof. For the study of music, Musikwissenschaft, to be taken seriously as an academic discipline, it had to prove it was a rigorous science. Musicology faced a problem. Pure sound is too fleeting for a microscope. They solved this by adopting the written score as a permanent specimen. Because improvisation couldn't be analyzed as data, it was excluded. Unwritten music could not be legitimized. The demand for scientific measurability created an exclusionary framework that invalidated any tradition relying on spontaneous creation. Evolutionary historiography formalized this bias. Scholars dismissed improvisation as a primitive phase of human art that modern society had successfully outgrown. This obsession with objective perfection birthed the concept of work-troia, the requirement of strict faithfulness to the musical work. The goal of work-troia was to eliminate performer subjectivity. The musician existed solely to deliver the objective content of the composer's score without deviation. Even established artists felt the pressure. Franz Liszt built his early career on subjective improvisations, yet eventually abandoned it to conform to this rigid academic ideal. This ideological shift locked the Western canon into a list of fixed masterworks, authored by a recognized class of genius composers. Today, the classical masterpiece is a rigid scientific dataset designed to eradicate human unpredictability from the concert hall. By the dawn of the 20th century, the centuries-long drive for total notational control reached its logical endpoint. It culminated in 12-tone serialism, a revolutionary method pioneered by Arnold Schoenberg. Total serialization mathematically locks every dynamic, rhythm, and pitch into a predetermined sequence. It represents the final triumph of the score over the performer. The classical canon we revere today is the direct descendant of Charlemagne's political unification merged with 19th century scientific positivism. This system allowed Western music to achieve architectural complexity and historical immortality on a scale previously impossible. The classical masterpiece secured its place in eternity, but its survival required the deliberate eradication of the element that makes music a living action, the true freedom of the unwritten moment.